On January 18th, 1952, a child was born in the village of Gopinatham in India. Born into a primitive life, this child had two choices: either to become a farmer and live a miserable life, or to get involved in illegal activities. He chose the latter. Veerappan. He started poaching as a young boy and killed his first elephant when he was only 10 years old. Together with his uncle Salvai Gounder, he smuggled elephant tusks and earned a good income. When he was old enough, he broke away from his uncle and formed his gang. The first thing that caught the eye was the distinctive mustache he had grown from his youth. In India, this type of mustache, called the Katabammon style, was usually grown by large landowners. Veerappan's land was the Sathyamangalam Forest, where he hunted. This jungle was a frightening area of thousands of square kilometers with many hills, dense woods, and inhabited by elephants and tigers. This was Veerappan's home. Veerappan had spent so much time in this jungle since childhood that he knew everything by heart. From which tree was where, which path led where the caves were, animal behavior, the food he could eat in the jungle, and the location of the stones in the jungle. He spent his youth in the jungle hunting elephants with his gang. When he was caught red-handed by a forest officer during a poaching elephant hunt, the officer was hit by bullets from the muzzle, thus committing his first murder at the age of 17. Veerappan killed over 2,000 elephants in total over the years. In his own words, "There are no more male elephants with long tusks to hunt in the jungle." And this time, he started to cut sandalwood illegally. Sandalwood, forbidden to be cut in India, was financially valuable because it was used in perfume making, the wood industry, and medicine. Veerappan recruited people from the surrounding forest villages to cut down sandalwood trees and sell them illegally, distributing most of the money to poor villagers. He was seen as a savior in this region, especially because of his help to the villages around the forest, and he was called the King of the Forests. However, he had absolutely no mercy on the forest officers who tried to stop him. Veerappan, who had killed dozens of forest officers in the process, had now become a notorious criminal. When the forest officer realized he could not deal with Veerappan, he sought help from the police. In a joint operation, the consignment was raided, and 65,000 tons of cut sandalwood were seized by the police. Veerappan said, "The Prime Minister sleeps on a bed made of sandalwood, but the villagers cannot cut sandalwood for a living." On the same day, he and his gang attacked a police vehicle and killed 6 policemen. The incident became news all over India, and a task force called the Special Task Force was immediately formed to hunt down Veerappan. And so began the chase in 1990. Veerappan fled with his gang to the jungles he called home. The Special Task Force had no success in the forests. The people in the forest villages refused to talk about Veerappan. Only Srinivas, the deputy forest officer, was able to curry favor with the villagers and got 10 members of the gang to surrender. Srinivas was frequently in contact with Veerappan's sister, and rumors about this spread to Veerappan. His sister couldn't bear the pressure and committed suicide. Veerappan blamed Srinivas. On the pretext of surrendering, Veerappan lured Srinivas alone into the forest and executed him with a single bullet. Then he decapitated him and carried the head with him in the jungle for 3 years. After this murder, the government placed a bounty of 2 million rupees on Veerappan's head, and operations were intensified. A commissioner named Shakil Ahmed was in charge of the operations. Shakil Ahmed raided the village of Nallur, where Veerappan's relatives lived, and when the villagers refused to talk, he set the village on fire, killing people in the village. Veerappan was furious and put Shakil Ahmed in his crosshairs. he immediately came up with a plan. He set an ambush at the intersection where Shakil Ahmed was going to drive by. As the car passed by, the road was blocked with rocks and shots were fired. Shakil Ahmed, the head of the operation, was assassinated. Then, a commissioner named Gopalakrishnan took over the operation. Gopalakrishnan continued to torment the villagers to find out where Veerappan was. So Veerappan decided to punish him too. He devised an interesting plan to lure the commissioner into the forest. Thanks to his informers, he put up a poster in the village square. The poster read, "Gopalakrishnan, you don't dare to face me. If you're not a son of a bitch, come and face me." Gopalakrishnan was so enraged that he took 2 cars full of cops and was driving to the meeting place when suddenly Veerappan had planted a bomb on the road. This incident went down in history as the Palar Blast, and 22 security personnel lost their lives. The police and Veerappan clashes that started in 1990 continued for years, and hundreds of police officers lost their lives. In the process, all the gang members were labeled, and all the relatives of the gang members were imprisoned and tortured, including women and children. To save them, Veerappan planned an action that would shake the whole of India. On the night of June 30th, 2000, Veerappan kidnapped Rajkumar, India's most popular movie star. Rajkumar was called the Emperor of Actors and was highly respected. Some even worshipped him. The streets of India were suddenly chaotic, and there were protests everywhere. Veerappan demanded 300 million rupees and the release of the family members of the gang members. The negotiations lasted 108 days, during which Rajkumar was held captive in the jungle. On the 108th day, the parties reached an agreement, and he was released unharmed. 2 years later, he kidnapped Nagappa, India's former agriculture minister. But when his demands were not met, he shot and executed Nagappa. By 2004, the manhunt had lasted 14 years. Veerappan, who had spent his life in the jungle, was now old, and after hundreds of shootouts, only 3 members of his gang were left. He was now 52 years old. He had 70% cataracts in his eyes and could no longer see at night or walk in the jungle. He wanted to go to Sri Lanka and live a quiet life there. He contacted someone to escape to Sri Lanka, and they left the jungle he knew as his home and boarded an ambulance. But the person he met was the secret police. Veerappan had been fooled this time. The ambulance's strobes were on, which meant the occupants were armed. The Indian police took no risks. The ambulance was machine-gunned and all the occupants were killed. Veerappan died from a single bullet to the head. To some, he was a murderous terrorist. Others hailed him as a folk hero.